The galaxy believed Earth had finally run out of choices. That belief spread faster than light itself, carried through quantum relays that linked millions of inhabited worlds into a single, silent audience. From glittering orbital cities suspended above crimson gas giants to frozen colonies buried beneath oceans of ice, entire civilizations paused to witness what many historians were already calling the final chapter of humanity. Every screen, every holographic broadcast, every neural network displayed the same image: the blue-green planet known as Earth, small and fragile against the endless darkness, now completely surrounded by the immeasurable military power of the Galactic Council. Thousands of colossal warships hung motionless around the solar system like predators circling wounded prey. Their polished hulls reflected the distant light of the sun, transforming the void into a glittering prison of steel and energy. Planet-cracking cannons rotated into firing position with mechanical precision. Swarms of interceptor drones drifted between battleships like schools of metallic sharks. Even the silence of space seemed heavier beneath the weight of such overwhelming force. Then, without warning, every communication channel in known space synchronized into one voice, deep, cold, ancient, and utterly without mercy. People of Earth. By unanimous decree of the Galactic Council, your civilization is ordered to capitulate within one planetary rotation. Resist, and your species will be erased from recorded history. The message echoed through every language simultaneously, translated perfectly into billions of dialects, leaving no room for misunderstanding. Across the galaxy, spectators leaned closer to their displays. They expected panic. They expected desperate negotiations, frantic military mobilizations, emotional farewells, or perhaps one last courageous speech from a doomed civilization. That was the pattern. Every species eventually reached this moment. Every empire, no matter how proud, eventually bent the knee before the Council's impossible strength. It had happened countless times across 10,000 years. There was no reason to believe humanity would be different. Even aboard the Council flagship, Supreme Executor Kareth folded his four hands behind his armored back and watched Earth with quiet confidence. The blue planet appeared deceptively peaceful. White clouds drifted lazily across continents. City lights sparkled on the night side like scattered jewels. No fleets emerged. No weapons fired. No transmissions interrupted the silence. They understand, one of his advisors whispered with satisfaction. They know resistance is meaningless. Kareth gave the smallest nod. It was almost disappointing. He had studied humanity's history, its wars, its revolutions, its stubborn refusal to surrender against impossible odds. He had expected at least a symbolic act of defiance before the inevitable collapse. Instead, Earth remained eerily calm. But beneath that calm, something impossible was happening. Families gathered not in shelters, but around dinner tables. Workers calmly finished their shifts. Children laughed in playgrounds beneath clear afternoon skies. Musicians filled city squares with songs instead of alarms. No riots. No chaos. No fear. Hidden beneath that ordinary rhythm was a confidence so profound it escaped every Council intelligence report. Then Earth's response finally arrived. It contained no plea for mercy. No surrender terms. No declaration of war. Just a single burst of encrypted data that spread across every military frequency in existence. As the Council's translators decoded the message, confusion swept across command bridges throughout the fleet. The words were astonishingly simple. Your timing is perfect. For one heartbeat, the entire galaxy stood still. Then, from somewhere on Earth, followed by another city, then another, until it echoed across an entire planet, came the unmistakable sound that no one had expected to hear. Humanity wasn't crying. Humanity wasn't begging. Humanity was laughing. Not with desperation. Not with madness. But with the quiet, unwavering confidence of hunters who had spent generations waiting for their prey to step willingly into the trap, for more than 2 centuries, humanity perfected the oldest strategy ever conceived, not overwhelming strength, but convincing the enemy that no strength existed at all. To the Galactic Council, Earth was little more than an ambitious young civilization struggling to survive among ancient powers. Human diplomats spoke with humility, accepted impossible trade restrictions, and signed treaties that many citizens publicly condemned as humiliating. Every inspection demanded by the Council was permitted. Every military limitation was acknowledged with polite compliance. Entire fleets were ceremonially dismantled beneath the watchful eyes of alien observers, their reactors shut down, their hulls cut apart by orbital lasers, while galactic news networks broadcast humanity's apparent submission across countless worlds. Historians called it the Age of Capitulation. Critics within the Council mocked humanity as timid, politically fractured, and hopelessly dependent on alien goodwill. They never questioned why Earth surrendered so gracefully. They never wondered whether they were seeing only the performance rather than the truth. At the center of that carefully constructed illusion stood Ambassador Elena Hayes. Calm. Soft-spoken. Unshakably composed. Her silver-threaded diplomatic uniform became a familiar sight inside the vast marble halls of the Galactic Council, where towering alien delegates debated the fate of younger civilizations. She bowed when protocol demanded. She apologized when accusations came. She accepted sanctions that crippled visible industries while quietly thanking Council representatives for their continued guidance. Many regarded her as the symbol of humanity's weakness. Some even pitied her. Yet behind her steady eyes lived a mind carrying secrets so immense that revealing even one of them would have ignited a galactic war decades too early. Every insult she endured. Every political defeat she accepted. Every carefully measured smile concealed another successful step in a plan generations had inherited and refined. While the galaxy watched diplomatic theater unfold, Earth transformed in absolute silence. Beneath Antarctica's kilometers-thick ice, fusion furnaces carved caverns large enough to build cities. Under the crushing pressure of the Pacific Ocean, automated factories assembled warships that no telescope had ever seen. Deep inside hollowed asteroids drifting beyond Neptune, entire populations of engineers lived and died without ever appearing in a single census, dedicating their lives to technologies officially declared impossible. Artificial intelligences designed themselves in isolated quantum networks beyond conventional detection. Massive shipyards orbited rogue black holes far outside mapped space, hidden within gravitational distortions that erased every trace of their existence. There, vessels unlike anything in the known galaxy slowly emerged from rivers of molten alloy and controlled singularities, each generation surpassing the last while remaining completely invisible to every Council sensor. Humanity never stopped innovating. Humanity simply stopped announcing its achievements. Even ordinary citizens understood the unspoken agreement. Children learned history that omitted certain chapters in public classrooms while discovering the truth inside secure academies hidden beneath mountains. Scientists published harmless discoveries for foreign journals while conducting revolutionary experiments behind layers of classified secrecy. Entire industries appeared obsolete because their real successors existed where no alien had ever looked. The illusion became so complete that eventually even the Council's greatest intelligence agencies stopped searching. They believed they had measured humanity completely. That confidence became Earth's strongest shield. Every concession purchased more time. Every apparent defeat encouraged greater arrogance among the stars. Every year the Council delayed invasion, believing humanity too insignificant to matter, was another year Earth's invisible civilization expanded beneath the surface. By the time the ultimatum finally arrived over the solar system, humanity's greatest weapon was not its hidden fleets, impossible technology, or unimaginable firepower. It was certainty. The certainty that the enemy had spent 200 years studying a carefully crafted illusion, while the real Earth had quietly become something the galaxy had never prepared to face. Supreme Executor Kareth stood in absolute silence upon the command dais of the Council flagship, his towering frame outlined by the pale glow of countless tactical displays. Before him, a wall of crystalline observation glass stretched from floor to ceiling, revealing the solar system in breathtaking detail. Earth floated at the center of the projection, small, vibrant, impossibly beautiful, its oceans shimmering beneath sunlight while ribbons of cloud drifted peacefully across familiar continents. Around that fragile blue world, the might of the Galactic Council formed an unbreakable ring. Thousands upon thousands of warships occupied precise orbital positions, each separated by exact mathematical intervals perfected through 10 millennia of conquest. Planet-cracker dreadnoughts rotated their immense spinal cannons toward Earth. Carrier vessels released endless formations of interceptor drones that glimmered like silver dust against the darkness. Gravity anchors ignited one after another, their invisible fields locking every known escape vector inside the solar system. Quantum jammers spread across interplanetary space, severing faster-than-light communications and ensuring no ally could answer a call for help. According to every military equation ever written, Earth was already defeated. Kareth had overseen the surrender of civilizations far older and stronger than humanity. He had watched proud empires collapse into panic within minutes of seeing this formation. Entire species had begged for mercy before the first warning expired. Fear was predictable. It obeyed universal laws. Yet something about Earth disturbed him in ways no battlefield ever had. His 4 eyes narrowed as fresh intelligence reports streamed across the tactical interface. No large-scale evacuations, one officer announced cautiously. Population movement remains within normal statistical variation. Another voice followed. Military communications remain unusually quiet. Orbital defenses have not entered combat readiness. A third report arrived seconds later. Civilian infrastructure continues uninterrupted. Transportation networks operating at 98% efficiency. The bridge fell silent. Kareth felt a sensation he had almost forgotten, a whisper of uncertainty. He expanded thousands of surveillance feeds simultaneously. In New York, commuters hurried through train stations with coffee in hand, barely glancing at emergency broadcasts scrolling across giant screens. In Lagos, fishermen returned to harbor beneath crimson evening skies as children raced along crowded docks. Tokyo shimmered beneath neon lights while restaurants remained full of laughter and conversation. Farmers harvested golden fields in Argentina. Families picnicked beneath flowering trees in New Zealand. Hospital staff calmly treated patients. Street musicians continued performing beneath towering skyscrapers. There were no riots. No desperate attempts to flee. No visible acceptance of inevitable extinction. Humanity behaved as though tomorrow were guaranteed. Karetha's advisors exchanged uneasy glances. Perhaps, one finally suggested, they are unaware of the true scale of our fleet. Another answered immediately. Impossible. Every transmission reached the surface. The executor remained silent. Deep within instincts sharpened by centuries of command, something refused to align. This was not courage born from ignorance. It was not denial. It looked dangerously like confidence. He remembered the historical files he had studied before the campaign, records describing a species that repeatedly survived impossible wars by refusing to behave as logic predicted. A species that smiled under pressure. Adapted faster than any opponent. Turned disasters into opportunities. He had dismissed those accounts as exaggerated myths created by sympathetic historians. Now, watching Earth continue its ordinary rhythm beneath the shadows of annihilation, those stories no longer seemed impossible. Then every command console on the flagship chimed simultaneously. Earth's official response had finally arrived. Officers leaned toward their stations as encrypted human code unraveled before Council translation systems. The bridge grew so quiet that even the hum of fusion reactors seemed distant. The message contained only 4 words. Permission to begin has been granted. Confused murmurs spread across the command deck. Before anyone could question the meaning, warning lights erupted across every tactical display. Sensor arrays flickered. Long-range scanners returned impossible readings. Quantum communication stuttered into silence. One by one, the Council's eyes across the battlefield began to go blind. And for the very first time in 10,000 years of uninterrupted conquest, the Galactic Council realized it no longer understood the battlefield it believed it controlled. The first sign that something had gone catastrophically wrong was not an explosion. It was silence. Across the Galactic Council armada, billions of sensors that had mapped every corner of the solar system only moments before suddenly returned nothing but impossible emptiness. Tactical displays flickered, then dissolved into storms of static. Navigation grids twisted into meaningless spirals. Artificial intelligences that had guided fleets flawlessly for centuries began reporting contradictory realities, each insisting it alone represented the truth. One scanner claimed Mars had vanished. Another placed Jupiter where Saturn should have been. Entire squadrons disappeared from formation, not destroyed, but simply erased from every instrument as though space itself had swallowed them whole. Warning alarms echoed from one flagship to the next, overlapping into a deafening chorus of confusion. Officers barked orders that no longer made sense because the battlefield itself had stopped obeying the laws they understood. Supreme Executor Kareth gripped the edge of the command dais as the stars outside the observation wall began to move. Not drift. Not rotate. Move. Constellations stretched like reflections on disturbed water. Light bent into impossible angles. The sun appeared to split into shimmering echoes before snapping back into place. It was as though reality itself had become fluid. Then the impossible revealed its true shape. Hidden throughout the solar system, within seemingly ordinary asteroids, dormant comets, abandoned mining stations, and drifting debris fields, vast structures awakened all at once. Metallic surfaces unfolded like colossal flowers blooming in vacuum. Rings thousands of kilometers wide ignited with pale blue light. Invisible gravitational engines, patiently assembled over 2 centuries of secrecy, synchronized with perfect precision. Waves rippled through spacetime itself, folding distances, redirecting trajectories, and carving the solar system into an enormous multidimensional maze. Council vessels found themselves trapped inside invisible corridors where every attempted maneuver only carried them farther from their allies. Fleets that had entered the system together now occupied isolated pockets of warp space, unable to communicate, reinforce, or even locate one another. The proud armada that had seemed unstoppable minutes earlier had become thousands of disconnected fragments drifting through a battlefield designed by minds they had underestimated for generations. Kareth felt a realization settle into his thoughts with crushing weight. This had not been built in days. Or years. It had taken lifetimes. Every diplomatic delay. Every inspection request. Every treaty negotiation. Every carefully staged surrender had purchased another piece of this unimaginable machine. Humanity had never been buying peace. Humanity had been buying time. Time to transform an entire star system into the greatest defensive weapon ever conceived. Across every surviving command channel, confusion turned into disbelief as classified historical records resurfaced in Kareth's memory. Reports his advisors had dismissed. Strange disappearances of survey drones near the asteroid belt. Unexplained gravitational fluctuations beyond Neptune. Missing reconnaissance probes. Every anomaly had been filed away as natural phenomena. Every clue had been ignored because no one believed humanity capable of engineering on such a scale. Their arrogance had done the work for them. Then every surviving screen aboard every council vessel illuminated with the same image. Ambassador Elena Hayes stood calmly within a softly lit command chamber somewhere on Earth. She wore no ceremonial robes now. Only a simple black uniform bearing the emblem of humanity. Behind her, enormous holographic maps displayed the imprisoned council fleets suspended inside shimmering gravitational cages. There was neither anger nor triumph in her expression, only quiet certainty. For 200 years, she said, her voice carrying effortlessly across every battlefield frequency, "You believed we were constructing a prison to keep ourselves safe from the galaxy." She paused as entire council formations continued drifting helplessly through distorted space. Then the faintest smile crossed her face. "You misunderstood." Her eyes met the cameras as though looking directly into every command bridge at once. "This was never our prison." Another heartbeat passed, heavy with unbearable realization. "It was yours." In that single sentence, the balance of power that had governed the galaxy for 10,000 years collapsed forever. For one long, breathless moment, nothing happened. The trapped fleets of the Galactic Council drifted helplessly within humanity's vast gravitational labyrinth, their engines roaring against invisible walls that refused to yield. Across countless command bridges, seasoned admirals shouted conflicting orders while navigation systems spiraled into failure. Weapons locked onto targets that no longer occupied the same coordinates. Entire squadrons fired into empty space, their beams swallowed by folded dimensions before emerging harmlessly light years away. Panic spread through an empire that had forgotten what it meant to lose control. Then, without warning, the darkness between the stars shimmered. Tiny ripples of silver light appeared across the solar system, multiplying by the thousands until space itself seemed alive. At first they looked like distant stars awakening. Then the lights grew larger. Sharper. Closer. Massive warships emerged silently from impossible angles, slipping out of folded dimensions as though reality had merely been a curtain drawn aside. They did not launch from Earth. They did not rise from hidden docks. They materialized everywhere at once. Around Jupiter's storms. Beyond Saturn's rings. Above the silent plains of Mars. Even from the shadows surrounding the sun itself. Hulls forged from alloys unknown to the Council reflected no light, their surfaces shifting with geometric patterns that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Towering carriers unfolded wings of shimmering energy, while sleek attack vessels glided forward with unsettling grace, leaving no exhaust, no sound, only the quiet certainty of overwhelming power. Humanity's invisible fleet had finally revealed itself. On the bridge of the Council flagship, Supreme Executor Kareth stared in speechless disbelief. Intelligence estimates had predicted perhaps a few hundred hidden ships. Instead, sensors, those few still functioning, counted tens of thousands, and the number continued climbing. Every decade of patient secrecy had multiplied into an armada unlike anything the galaxy had imagined. Then came the first strike. Not a blinding barrage of annihilation. Not a wave of indiscriminate destruction. Precision. Human vessels fired narrow beams of coherent gravitational energy that sliced cleanly through enemy propulsion systems without rupturing a single life support compartment. Engines shut down. Weapon arrays fell silent. Shield generators collapsed. Carrier hangars sealed themselves as carefully targeted electromagnetic pulses disabled launch systems while leaving medical facilities untouched. Autonomous drone swarms flooded through the battlefield like schools of intelligent predators, surrounding isolated Council ships with breathtaking coordination. Boarding craft followed close behind, carrying armored human marines who breached enemy hulls with disciplined efficiency. They moved room by room, securing command centers, protecting surrendering crews, and escorting terrified civilians toward emergency shelters. Medics treated wounded Council soldiers alongside injured humans without hesitation. Fire suppression drones extinguished flames inside enemy vessels before they could spread. Every action carried the same unmistakable message: humanity had come to end the war, not erase those who had started it. Watching the battle unfold, Kareth felt something more painful than defeat. Understanding. For centuries, the Galactic Council had equated power with fear, believing true strength demanded absolute domination. Humanity shattered that belief with every measured decision. They possessed the capability to destroy entire fleets within minutes. Instead, they chose restraint. They disabled rather than slaughtered. They rescued rather than abandoned. They fought with terrifying effectiveness while refusing to surrender their compassion. In that moment, Kareth understood the greatest intelligence failure in galactic history. The Council had mistaken diplomacy for weakness, patience for cowardice, mercy for surrender. They had laughed at humanity's willingness to negotiate because they assumed only the powerless sought peace. The truth was infinitely more dangerous. Humanity had sought peace because it understood exactly what war would cost everyone. As the final Council flagship powered down under human control, silence settled over the battlefield once more. But it was no longer the silence of fear. It was the silence that follows the collapse of an age. Across the stars, billions watched the impossible unfold. The mightiest empire in recorded history had not been defeated by a civilization driven by hatred. It had been humbled by one strong enough to win, and wise enough not to become the very monster it had overcome. The war ended not with another shot, but with a silence so profound it seemed to echo across the stars themselves. Days after the last Council warship had powered down, representatives from every surviving member civilization gathered once more inside the Grand Assembly Chamber, a place where countless worlds had once been forced to kneel beneath the authority of the Galactic Council. The towering circular hall, carved from shimmering crystal older than many suns, had witnessed declarations of conquest, annexations, and the extinction of entire civilizations. Today, for the first time in 10,000 years, its atmosphere felt different. The immense chamber was no longer filled with confidence. It was filled with humility. Along the center platform rested the original surrender document prepared for Earth, its elegant metallic pages untouched, the Council's seal still gleaming beneath the lights. It had been written with absolute certainty, assuming humanity would eventually sign away its freedom. No one reached for it now. Instead, another document lay beside it, a simple agreement bearing Earth's insignia rather than the Council's. Ambassador Elena Hayes stepped forward, her footsteps echoing softly through the vast chamber as thousands of delegates watched in complete silence. She could have demanded reparations beyond imagination. She could have dissolved the Council forever, claimed its fleets, occupied its worlds, and rewritten galactic history through fear. No civilization would have possessed the strength to stop her. Yet the treaty she carried contained none of those things. There were no demands for tribute. No forced occupations. No vengeance disguised as justice. Only a new charter built upon principles the galaxy had long forgotten: mutual sovereignty, equal representation regardless of military power, scientific cooperation without coercion, and a single promise: that never again would an advanced civilization use overwhelming strength to force another species into submission. Some delegates stared at the document in disbelief. Others lowered their eyes in quiet shame. Supreme Executor Kareth, no longer wearing the ceremonial armor that had symbolized unquestioned authority, looked at the pages before him with emotions he had never expected to feel. Defeat had humbled him. Mercy transformed him. Slowly, he placed his hand upon the treaty and signed. One by one, representatives from worlds that had once feared the Council followed. The sound of each signature echoed through the chamber like another chain quietly breaking. Beyond the station's immense observation windows, human ships escorted the remaining Council fleets out of the solar system, not as prisoners, but as honored survivors returning home. There were no victory parades. No celebrations of conquest. Human engineers helped repair damaged alien vessels before departure. Medical teams continued treating former enemies. Children from liberated colonies watched the departing armadas disappear into hyperspace without hatred in their eyes. Across the galaxy, historians struggled to explain what had happened. Military analysts focused on Earth's hidden technology. Scientists debated the impossible gravitational labyrinth. Politicians argued over centuries of failed intelligence. Yet ordinary people reached a far simpler conclusion. Humanity had possessed the power to conquer the galaxy. Instead, it chose to change it. Stories spread from world to world until they became legend. Parents told their children about the day an empire threatened Earth with extinction and received laughter instead of surrender. Veterans spoke quietly of human soldiers who saved enemy lives after winning impossible battles. Artists painted the image of a small blue world standing unbroken beneath the shadows of 1,000 warships. Generations passed, but the lesson endured. Whenever a rising empire spoke proudly of domination, someone would remember Earth. Whenever a ruler believed fear alone created strength, someone would recall the humans who had defeated the greatest military force in history without surrendering their compassion. Because in the end, humanity's greatest weapon had never been its hidden fleets, impossible technology, or unmatched strategy. It was the simple belief that true strength is measured not by how many worlds you can force to kneel, but by how many you inspire to stand beside you. And from that day forward, whenever the stars grew dark with the threat of another tyrant, one sentence echoed through the galaxy like an eternal promise: never mistake humanity's laughter for surrender.